We have Rich Elkins, who a lot of you probably already know. He's the Land Records Manager at the North Carolina Department of the Secretary of State. And Rich is going to talk about using GIS to maintain annexation history. Thanks, Rich.
All right. Thank you, Kent. Can everybody hear me okay? I'll go ahead and apologize in advance. I've got some kind of allergy or cold thing going on, so I'll try not to get into another coughing fit. But so you might wonder if you work for a municipality, you're probably quite familiar with the fact that you have to report your annexations to the Secretary of State. But those of you who are in counties probably haven't had a lot to deal with that. There's the actual copy of the annexation about when a municipality annexes an area, what are they required to do? And they're required, of course, to record a copy of that ordinance and an accurate map in the Register of Deeds in the county where it's located. But they're also required to file a copy with the state. And the Secretary of State office is the department that goes to, and our division is the one that oversees that process. And note that it says that an accurate map needs to be recorded. There's a lot of misunderstanding about what an accurate map is, and there's no actual statutory definition, but I'll mention that later on. And then lastly, you're required to report it to the U.S. Census Bureau as part of the Boundary and Annexation Survey. Well, at the Secretary of State, we serve as the state certification agent for the Boundary and Annexation Survey. So all these annexations that are submitted to the Census Bureau come to our office, and we have to verify that they were legally done. We don't actually go to the county and check and make sure that each one was done with the Register of Deeds. Usually that's usually not a problem because the municipality wants the tax money. So if they record their stuff at the Register of Deeds, that's usually what's required in order for the county to start taxing that municipality. So we check to make sure that it's been recorded with us. And it's not something that if you forgot, so boom, you're out. No, we make extensive efforts to follow up with cities that miss reporting annexations, encouraging them to get those reported to us so that they do get all the funding that they're entitled to. So how many of you actually have done BAS back when it was on paper? And you had the paper maps and the colored pencils. And I mean, it's amazing that the maps are as accurate as they are, considering that you had to draw these things and then they had to digitize them. One of the issues, though, as far as doing digital submissions, is that there are a lot of municipalities who do not have GIS capabilities. Your bigger ones tend to, but smaller ones usually don't. Sometimes they might not even have full-time staff. So one of the things that the Census Bureau and our office have been working on is encouraging municipalities and counties to enter into an agreement for a consolidated BAS. So rather than 500-600 different municipalities in the state having to report to the Census Bureau, these counties have agreed that the municipalities within them that also agree that they will actually do the submissions for them. And you can see here that we have 70 counties already that have agreed to do this for municipalities. There's 28 who are not yet, and then there's two counties that have no municipalities at all. Not a single incorporated town in the entire county. So another problem that exists is that there are lots of different versions of maps. Where is the city limits? The municipalities may have their own maps. They may have it in GIS, or they may just have a map drawn on the wall with colored in magic marker. It really varies depending on the technological abilities of the town. Counties have maps, especially tax, planning, and E911 would find this be an important layer. These could be centrally maintained, or in some cases you might actually have different people maintaining them for different departments, and there could be discrepancies between those maps. But we do know that within state agencies, you have numerous state agencies that are collecting this municipal boundary data, and the data that they have varies widely. Also, if you look at census maps, if you take county data, data from the state, and census data, you're going to have possibly 3 different boundaries. Sometimes entire annexations are missing. Sometimes the boundaries are just off of each other. So one of the things that the Working Group for Municipal Boundaries is trying to do is trying to actually have an official state municipalities layer. Rather than each of these different departments listed up here maintaining their own and going to counties and municipalities and asking them for their data, doing a single official state boundaries layer. Ideally, we're looking at that it would be maintained by Geodetic Survey, because they already do state boundaries and county boundaries. And then all the different departments could use that same data and have that official information. As part of that effort, we have a small county annexation submission pilot project with a few counties, and that's encouraging those counties to actually submit not only the map and ordinance data that we're already having to get in the Secretary of State, but also putting spatial data into that workflow and just testing out to see how it works. And so far, it seems to be working pretty well. Most of the counties that are participating don't have a lot of annexations, or if they do have annexations, they try and make them all effective at the same time of the year. But like Wake and Forsyth counties have larger cities and have a lot more annexations going on. But part of this is not only to standardize that data so that we have one official answer to where is the boundary, but also it's going to reduce the number of requests to you if you're a local person for that data. Once that data is then established, then all we need are the updates. Don't need you to send us the whole boundary every time. What changed? It's a lot easier to send us a polygon showing this area is annexed effective this date, as opposed to having an entire new map and then having to do change detections. Okay? So as part of this, our first task is to find previously unreported or uncertified annexations and get those corrected so that we start out with a base map that is correct. Then, from that point on, we're going to maintain individual polygons to track each annexation. And then if you have other, and you would maintain this because there's a lot of advantages to maintaining these individual annexation polygons. Wake County has a really great example where they actually have an animation and you can actually see the city of Raleigh as it grows out because they maintained each of those annexation history polygons and can do a time sequence on it, and you can see the city as it grows and expands. But for a lot of applications, having that many little polygons is going to slow things down. If you just want to know, is it in the city or not, you don't really need to see all that annexation history. And for those kind of situations, all the polygons can be merged together or dissolved into one polygon for much more efficient processing. But when you've got many polygons, you can go to one. But if you have the one polygon, you've lost, if you're not maintaining those individual polygons for your annexation history, you've lost all that important data that could be used for various purposes. I don't know, maybe a planner, you have somebody come in and they want to do something to their house and you don't have a building permit. Well, was the house actually inside the city limits when the house was built? It's going to take a lot of research if you don't actually have this history built up to determine whether or not they were even in your jurisdiction so that you should have that permit. So plan for maximum utility, and it's never too late to start the process. You can always start with your existing city limits and start anything else that gets added, maintaining that annexation history. So, as you're setting this up, you may have a couple questions. What are the things that you want to actually keep track of? Right now, we don't have a standard format yet, but I'm sure the working group for municipal boundaries is going to be developing some recommendations for what types of attributes that you need to maintain. When I worked in Pitt County for several years, I thought they had a very good system of maintaining their annexation history. And here are some of the fields that we maintained. We had this status field, which had an ICL, OCL, and ANX, and I'll explain that in a little bit. We kept up with which municipality it is. If you're in a municipality, of course, your municipal boundary layer that you're keeping up with is just your municipality. But if you're in a county, you may have one or many municipalities. You need to maintain, of course, an attribute to say which municipality is it. And if you color them different colors, it makes it a lot easier to see the maps. I've seen some maps where you have multiple municipalities all in this big cluster, and they all run together and have little annexation pieces, islands, but they're all the same color, so you can't tell what's what unless you actually query them. The ordinance number is that is a key number that you would want to make sure to maintain. That is going to be the number by which the municipality is going to know their annexation. That's also the number by which we track it at the Secretary of State, and it's also one of the required fields that you need to report when you're doing a BAS update. You also want to maintain your effective date and effective year. You may also want to do when it's adopted, but really the important one is when it's effective. And I maintained it in two separate fields. I had an effective date, so I actually knew the actual date. But then I also put just a simple year field, because the year field, rather than the date field, was a lot easier to query. Date fields aren't always the easiest things to do analysis on. But if you have just a simple year field, you can do analysis much more easily. You also want to track the relevant documents. Has that ordinance been recorded? What's the book and page of that ordinance? What's the book and page of the map? So if there's a question as to what's actually included, you can quickly go and find the map, quickly find the ordinance, finding what the date is. You may want to track the area of the annexation, the perimeter of the annexation, and also whether it's been reported to the Boundary and Annexation Survey. Oh, and whether it's been reported to the Secretary of State's office. So I talked about status, and in Pitt County we used these three codes to say what each polygon was. We had an ICL, inside city limits, and an OCL, and those were only used for holes. In GIS, you can have a hole in the polygon, but our CAD software used in Dispatch had a lot of difficulty with these void holes in a polygon, that it didn't always recognize them. So we actually built those holes as polygons, but we attributed them as OCL, so we knew that's actually a hole. Then we also had a category ANX that we used for something that's been annexed, but that annexation's not effective yet. So we could see those annexations, and luckily the municipalities in our county were really good about either doing annexations effective December 31st or June 30th. If you wonder why those dates are used, ask somebody that works in tax, because when you do an annexation anytime other than June 30th, there's going to be some proration of taxes, and they're going to have to pay partial year taxes. So December 31st makes it kind of easy. It's just half of the year. When you have annexations that are effective any other time, it can get really complicated. All right, symbolized polygons by municipality. We talked about merging them. And as you have time, you can always go back and subdivide your old polygons and add that history back in. Maybe do that as a project one at a time. Ordinance number, it's a very good, unique identifier, important for various reasons that I was talking about earlier. They may be adopted well in advance. It's important for tax billing purposes. A lot of times, if you have an annexation and your tax system, if you have an annexation that happens after January 1st, you may have to go and do multiple entries because you have different year billings and things like that. But using those fields maximizes the utility. Recorded ordinance, annexation map, document stated annexation area, subdivision name, has it been filed with the Secretary of State, boundary and annexation survey. Okay, so let's get to a couple quick examples because I'm running out of time. All right, I went to the city of Greenville at the Register of Deeds and I found that in a certain particular period of time we had 4 ordinances for annexations. Nice that they actually labeled each annexation with its ordinance number. And then I looked for the maps, and in addition to one other irrelevant map, they also have each of the maps that was involved with it. I can go to the to Secretary of State's office, and I can also search by annexations. You go to Secretary of State Land Records, and that search is right there at the top of the Land Records page. Search by Greenville, and I found all 4 of those annexations filed. You can also see the ordinance and the map on our website. So, quick. This is an accurate map. A screen print from your web GIS is not an accurate map. We get so many annexation submissions that are printouts from the county web GIS with ortho backgrounds and color, and it's horrible. This is of importance enough that we recommend that you have a survey. So in this particular case, we've got annexation of an entire parcel, and I'm having to rush here, but you select that parcel, attribute it, select what town, and fill out all the different attributes, and boom, there's your thing. And you can see the numbers there. We like to keep up with it by the book and page of the map. That was our easiest way of tracking it there, but you can attribute it by any of your different fields. So you can see 3 different annexations there. Here we have an annexation split. They're only annexing a portion of the property. So at the same time we're doing that parcel split, we're using that map to actually oftentimes correct the property lines. We're splitting the property, we're selecting it, and then we're adding it to the city limits. And last example, we have a little bit more complicated one. This is actually an annexation in one of the holes. And you can see here that once you're annexing that part, you're actually taking the hole and you're going to create 2 different non-contiguous things. So we're still going through the same process. We're splitting. In Pitt County, we did not do split billings. Some counties will do split billings. We would not. If something gets annexed, it gets split out. So we would split it. In this case, we have 3 different parcels. And then we select one and we annex it. All right, here's contact information. Contact me or John Bridgers, also known as Lord Yadkin. Especially if you have questions about bass stuff, he's going to be more the person that you're going to talk to. If you got more questions about ways to go about, I'm really running out of time, but if you got any questions. Yes? Secretary of annexations, it only goes back into like the 60s. At one time, any annexation had to go through the General Assembly, and I'm not sure. John, do you know what year it was? 1947. Oh, 47, sorry. But we only have what was submitted. So if you go back to that history, you may find that there's a lot of stuff that never got submitted to us. And if you do find that, you're supposed to submit it within a certain period of time after the effective date, but we take back information. We're not going to penalize. The more complete our records are, the better. I'm supposed to restate the question. He was asking about what what we have on record at the Secretary of State, and whether it's maps or it can really vary.
It should be mapped all the way back because the original ordinance, the statute of 1947 said ordinance quality is going to matter.
Quality, yes, and then there are a lot of times we get incomplete submissions. So if you have a question you want to just ask me, or you got something everybody?
Yeah, I got a kind of comment. I am doing this right now for Winston-Salem.
Okay.
And I used the Secretary of State thing, and it did stop somewhere in the 50s, and there are tons and tons of holes and missing a bunch of stuff. So when I was going to get done, I was just going to send her a CD of everything that's done.
Great. Yes, she was saying that she did some research and she found a lot of stuff that we're missing. There is a lot of stuff there, but there is also a lot of stuff missing. So check out your municipalities and see what we have, and contact us. I've got cards. John, you have cards? Okay. Yes, sir.
Real quick question. We're working on this in the city of Durham also, and we've had some local acts in legislature. We don't have a place for the local act in the data set. We don't have an actual field for those cases. We're just adding those in where we would have the ordinance number. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, he was asking if you have a legislative annexation or de-annexation. Yes, you would use the session law as in place of the ordinance. And that's also a really good thing because you can you see the SL, right away that that's where it is. And even if you don't have that document, it's something that we can access. So we do ask that if you get one of those, that you still notify us. We try to track those, but there's weird things go on sometimes in the General Assembly, and we could miss some of the legislative annexations. Yes?
Does the Secretary of State have the authority to reject maps that are submitted, like the parcel maps you were saying about?
We will often ask people to submit something different. Any other questions? Yes?
I do a fair amount of work with redistricting.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one of the questions that comes up, for example, if North Carolina congressional districts were to be redrawn as a consequence of the Supreme Court case, is instead of following municipal boundaries as they were at the census in 2010, what municipal boundaries should they be looking at? So I think that the potential for a statewide data set could be huge. And I'm just curious when, if there's sort of a time frame for when that might be available.
We're still in the pilot phase of developing that statewide data set. Right now, you've got multiple ones. So the Board of Elections is going to have one, and that's probably what they're going to be going by, I would expect. But we're hoping to get that so that we know that all the departments all have access to the same one and can use the same, that there's not a question as to which one is correct. But that could still be a few years off. All right. We only went over by 3 minutes. Oh, we're still good. I thought. Sorry. Yes.
Let me say, the session laws, the annexations passed by the General Assembly. The General Assembly is the statute which reference there. You have to supply the ordinance and the map. They made that rule. They don't follow their own rules. So there are probably no maps with the session law. And a lot of times they just use PIN number, which is a if you're in charge of municipality, please, by all means, do not use parcel numbers, PIN, especially PIN numbers, if you are writing annexation ordinances.
Right. So yeah, when we get those session laws, I'm restating because you probably couldn't hear it on the recording. That does not include a map. So if you let us know, and if you can, in those particular cases, a GIS map may be all that you can do because it's not something that you have any control over. You can't say, in order to annex territory, you have to get a survey of it. This is something that's being done over your head. So some map is better than no map. But if you could make sure that it does not have orthos, that you minimize, we really don't need to know the zoning. We're just looking for a map showing the extent, maybe the parcels within that extent, that is shaded gray, preferably not colored, because when it gets scanned into our system, the color gets really messy. That will help, because when you get this ordinance and it's 3 pages long and it's just lists of parcel number after parcel number after parcel number, and 50 years down the line, when we've changed datums 2 or 3 times and nobody uses PIN numbers anymore, who's going to know what that PIN number was? It's not great practice to do, but there's nothing saying they can't do it. And if there were, it's the General Assembly and they can change it. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
So I'm researching the Raleigh right now,
Mhm.
and going way back to when the state annexed for us.
Mhm.
So all of that is in the state archives, digital collection mostly. Except I'm coming across where the state annexed something for us and put it up to an election. I don't know how to find the election results for that.
Yeah, I've seen that. In addition to the annexations, charter amendments are also filed with us. However, I don't know how far back that goes. It may be the same. But I've seen, going through charter amendments, a lot of things that the state authorized a referendum, but then you never have anything to verify whether or not the referendum passed or not. So, did this area get annexed? Did they change from a mayor council to a council manager form of government? All different kinds of things. And that would probably have to be something you'd have to check with the Board of Elections to see if they have election results from that far back. I don't know. Or if it's stored at the archives. Yeah, newspaper articles might be search News and Observer's archives to see, if you know the date of the referendum, then within a couple days you'd figure there'd be something in the newspaper about it. That's a good idea. Yeah, John, you want to come up here to the microphone so it'll get on the recording too, and I don't have to restate it. 2 minutes.
All right. The Secretary of State's website does have pre-1947 stuff, even going back to the 1800s and stuff, but that information was written on index cards, kind of like a card catalog when I was in school. And so when they went to the digital format, they scanned those cards into the system, and they are available on the website, but sometimes
They're hard to read.
They're hard to read. And you can go back and look. It will be a session law or private law. You can go back and look in those law books from 1898 or whatever it may be and find that thing. And there's some of that we're slowly getting online, but it's a process.
Yeah, and there are certain indexes, that you can actually search an index and find all the, from this year to that year, all the different session laws and general laws that were passed by municipality.
And if there's something you specifically need help, give me a holler. I'll be glad to help you out.
Yeah, we do a lot of research, and we have digital copies of the session laws going back into the 1700s. So, not all of them. I don't think we have indexes going back that far, but we do actually have copies of the books, digital copies.
Are those digital copies available online?
I think there. Yeah, I think there's like Google. There's like a Google something that has them.
Scans of the actual books.
I think so. But if you can't find it, and you're looking for something, if you can tell us what you're looking for, we can probably find it for you. We've got them all.
All right, guys. Let's cut there. It's lunchtime.
All right. Yep. Thank you.